Hi everyone, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you all and such a wide variety esteemed panelists across various parts of the film industry. So if you look at the film industry, I'll just share some perspective before we begin the panel. I think thankfully, despite whatever noise that OTT has been making in terms of threat to cinema, we have come back to 90% of pre-COVID levels as far as box office are concerned. I think four mega trends, in my view, have come in the post-COVID era. One big mega trend is films have gone directly to OTT, which didn't happen, before the pandemic. The second big trend is that audience is not going to watch small, medium budget content frequently as they would in the pre-COVID era. If you look at the third thing, we've seen a clear change in terms of consumption habit. So, the audience is only going for large budget films more often in terms of frequency. The fourth is that there is a change in talent consumption. Footfall numbers, I think we're still about 30% down for the industry as a whole. Now, this is after taking in account the expansion in screen count that we've had and also the ticket prices which are there. So I think within the footfall part, I think Hindi has been, has seen a bigger impact here, down close to 40% in our assessment. And that's primarily because of small, medium budget content, again, being a laggard here. So I think the question here to ask is in terms of strategy, today, how do we as producers or exhibitors try to get this footfall back to pre-COVID levels first and then expand and scale up from there? Also, I think there are 4-5 things that we can look at from a broader perspective. One is, of course, focus on franchise-based films. Try to relook scripts, in terms of avoiding making remakes of Hollywood films, remakes of regional films which are there. Try to get this North and South blend together, wherein the talent is working with each other. Try to make a film which will appeal to the overseas audience. And eventually you can have a better monetization also in place here. So, and also last but not the least, I think, the importance of VFX. So we all know how VFX can impact, the way a film is made and consumed, and eventually drive a big chunk of footfalls into cinemas. And these are certain solutions broadly which I personally, believe into. We'll obviously have, the panelists, sharing their views as well. So firstly, I'd like to bring Aashish here in the conversation. The one big trend we've seen is that the dependence on large budget films, specifically Hindi genre, has kind of increased substantially in the post-COVID era. So would you like to get your take on this? How important is success for large budget films now because the dependence is gone so high? As a production house, you are also making many large budget films. So what is the kind of success formula? Because now it's become a very critical part of box office.
Thanks, Karan. Good morning, everybody. So to answer your question regarding the success formula, I wish there was one. I don't think there is one formula to make a successful film, because if we had it, then everybody would be making successful films, right? But there has been a huge learning post-COVID, and clearly the audience has changed, the dynamics have changed. People have got used to watching so much content on OTT, very evolved content. The way the OTT shows have been presented or films have been presented is very unique. And our audience right now is at a cusp of probably liking some of it and still wanting the old so-called entertainers or masala films. To answer your question about big films, in my opinion, a big film is good content. I don't think the scale of the film can really decide whether the film is good or bad. Having said that, we need to make films with big actors, with large scale to get the audience in. There's no question about that as well. And in the past, or during COVID, we've seen that a lot of these big, so-called big films have done great business. We saw the business of Pathan, which kind of broke all records for the Hindi industry. So we need to continue making these films with big stars, big magnum opuses, keeping in mind the festival releases and all of that. And they will continue to rake money. Some of them will make money, some will not. To your point regarding IP, we need to also evaluate creating new IP, because and as well as look at the old IP. We have a film in the Hindi industry called Gadar 2, which is releasing this Friday, which is actually a 17-year-old IP. But the expectation of Gadar 2 opening will be far bigger than probably some of the other biggest releases of the Hindi industry this year. So this is the actual beauty of IP, and this is something that producers should definitely be looking at. We have seen the IP performance of some of the South films recently, like maybe a KGF and maybe some of the other films like Pushpa, what Pushpa 2 could do. We should continue making good IP and looking at the older IP at Lyca. We have Indian 2 coming next year, which probably will be one of the biggest blockbusters of next year. So as producers, we definitely have to look at the bigger films and the big IP that we can cash on, including VFX and all of that. The other important thing, according to me, is that we cannot just ignore the medium budget films. Because that, according to me, is the bread and butter of the exhibition business. You can only have that many big films in a year that release on a festive date, make the big mullah on the first weekend, second weekend. But what happens to the other weeks? We have 52 weeks in a year, and we need to create some good content for that. What we're currently missing out are films like, if I go back to the Hindi industry, films like, say, Neeraj or Mukherjee sitting here, a film like Raz, which haven't released and done that well from a medium budget point of view. We have had a few films like, say, maybe Kashmir Files or, say, Kerala Story, but they did well for various reasons. And we need to find the content that can actually be made at a medium budget and can service the industry during the interim period of these big festive releases. Definitely, there's a big opportunity of merging talent both from North and South. And recently, Yash Raj Films has announced What To with Junior NTR Sir and Hrithik, which is a great combination. And according to me, that's going to break all records when you actually add up the numbers. So that's the other way of doing things. Having said that, bottom line is content is king, like we've always been saying. Let's focus on getting the content right. Let's focus on giving the audience a very big viewing experience to come to the theaters. We have Preetham sitting here. We've clearly seen the business of Oppenheimer in India on the IMAX screens. I still haven't been able to get the best seats. I've been trying to get them for my family, but the minute the advance opens for IMAX in the area that I stay in, the shows are full. So definitely the format will also make a major difference going forward, and content is something we have to back at the right ticket pricing. I think that is something we don't discuss. We only discuss the content, but what is that formula to get the right ticket, to get the audience in and give them samosas and popcorn at the right price?
Great. I think those are some really great insights in terms of how we can kind of rework this entire content strategy so that we can get the footfalls back to pre-COVID levels. I would like to bring Neeraj here in the conversation. Neeraj, I'd like to get your thoughts on Hollywood per se. What we saw in the month of June, was a very big, pleasant surprise. 3 back-to-back films doing well. But genre hit numbers of 20% contribution or plus, and what will be the drivers for the same? And if you can share your expertise, correctly around marketing efforts that you guys are doing in terms of, going for a larger target audience or in dubbing or localization, what are the strategies around that?
Hi, morning everyone. So let me first touch upon the Hollywood film business in India. As a country, we are very blessed to have our own film industry. My engagement in my previous assignment at Warner Brothers, Howard Viacom, I can tell you there are countries that solely depend on Hollywood films to keep their box office going. We as India are extremely fortunate, one, to be the kind of films we produce in India. So we should be absolutely proud of that. Number one. Number two, Hollywood continues to be in the 20% segment, but if you see the box office itself has grown multi-fold. Unfortunately, we don't have a official box office tracking mechanism. There are trade pundits and analysts who are now tossing all sorts of numbers. But given the range that I have seen on the box office data that we've been as studios sharing with each other for the last 15 years, it's extremely encouraging that people have started watching more and more Hollywood films thanks to people like IMAX, who are providing a platform for Hollywood to play films in the manner in which they need to get played. Thanks to multiplexes, thanks to the growth in the exhibition business that is giving space for not just Hollywood, but all languages to come in. Recently, I don't know if you know, but Japanese anime films have started doing extremely well in India. So clearly we have the capacity to watch more films. Thankfully, we like to watch a lot of movies as a nation. So Bollywood will have a steady growth, but I think India will continue to dominate because that's our local flavor, and local flavor is never getting out of season. So, as I say, we travel abroad, we like our pastas and pizza, but 4th day we want all us and rice being in Chennai. So, given that, India will continue to dominate box office. As far as marketing goes, yes, the kind of budgets Hollywood films have, when you have $100 million marketing budget, now those are big numbers. Our marketing budgets barely touch $10 billion. But the kind of noise we make because of the innovative ways of marketing, we have our own films to our audience, which is basically in India, and to the Indians staying outside of India. They say there's 1.4 billion here. I can assure you there's a billion outside of India as well. So getting all these people to watch films, our marketing efforts are probably towards the Indian audience who is living abroad. And when these films cross over, we are yet to see that magic happen, and I'm sure it will happen. If an Indian film today has gone out and won an Oscar recently, I think we are up there in making sure that we get the recognition that our industry deserves. We're very happy with the recognition we have in our country. There's a little bit of global attention that we all like and seek, and I'm sure that's going to come too.
Right, so that's a perspective of Hollywood in terms of how we can foresee the numbers increasing for Hollywood and the drivers of the same. Preetham, just an extension on Hollywood, the topic that we're covering today. What is your take on VFX? So two things I wanted to cover. One is on the VFX front. How would you rate the quality of VFX in India? I mean, are we kind of prepared to make large-scale VFX films which can appeal to a global audience as well? That's one. And secondly, what do you make of this IMAX also, right? In terms of the number of screens that we have, as people have pointed out, and it's always an issue to kind of book tickets. So are you seeing that traction wherein there is an acceptance for more IMAX screens being added? There's an acceptance from the audience as well who's willing to pay that premium to go and watch an IMAX film?
Right. In terms of VFX, I think India is struggling a little bit with VFX, and we saw that with movies like Ramashka, which went through more than what is expected from a reiteration perspective. And there were some delays because of VFX, and that is definitely improving. For us in India, I know the company we work with is called Prime Focus, who does all the remastering, and they have a company called DNAG, which is one of the world leaders in VFX, and they are definitely getting stronger in the VFX space. In terms of the demand for the format itself, and like Aashish was saying about tickets in reference to that, we are very small, and we're running 24 screens today, but we expect to be 31 screens by the end of this year. The demand is definitely growing. We are in tier 2 cities like Coimbatore. We have our partners here in the audience today, which is doing fantastic numbers, and there is an acceptance to the format in tier 2, tier 3 cities. And 5 years ago, 8 years ago, if you told me, will IMAX be feasible in a small town, I would have said no. And today I question my sort of logic on that. So we're definitely growing stronger. The acceptance for format is growing. We're indexing pretty highly in the country. On Oppenheimer, which is being spoken about, we are at the moment about 15% of the country's box office on 24 screens, which is substantially high by many standards. So that market share is growing strongly. And I think to VFX, one of the things that we was talking backstage was that the movie has to be told as a storytelling. Today, there's a lot of reasons that the storytelling gets eluded because it's either shot for an OTT or it's shot for something else. But when a movie is shot for a theatrical format, like an Oppenheimer was, you see the demand. You see people coming out of their houses to watch the movie. And I think that should continue in some shape, form, or size.
Great. So we're seeing that, India is indeed a focus market for many of these Hollywood films, given the numbers that you point out. 15% is not a small number as such. So I think clearly there is a demand for IMAX. Now, moving on to Hindi content, we've got Vishesh here, who is one of the formidable production houses in the country that we have in the genre. So Vishesh, what's your broader assessment of Hindi content? Obviously, you've worked on both the things. You've also made web series. You've also worked for OTT platforms. Obviously, there are some constraints for the film content on theatre because of censorship issues and all. What's your take on this broader footfall decline, small medium budget content trend? Do you think it's a permanent write-off because the films that way which come into theatres are always censored and there are constraints, and today the Gen Z, the youth wouldn't want to consume that content. So do you feel that theatrical films of small medium budget nature are a complete write-off with the OTT era and with the freedom that OTT is giving in terms of the concepts, the uncensored content? What's your broader take on this?
Yeah, Karan. I think Aashish put a correct point to this also. I think a lot of these things are put into these large packages and sweeping statements, which Ashish said is like, you know what, I think, and then leaders further said, and then Preetham has said that. I think when big producers, I'm saying everybody included, looks at is okay, the one constant will be that 18 months from now, this actor will still be a big star. And then reverse engineer from there. I think we need to, go out of the crease a little bit. Fortune favors the mold is a reason that statement is made. And if we don't, we stop going to this trend mindset. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't chase trends, don't predict trends. You can do that to a certain extent. I know everyone has their balance sheets and they need to have some sense to it. But at the same time, you need to follow the intuition and the gut of the storytellers, which I think has gone out of the ecosystem. Filmmakers are burning with a desire to tell a story that is with them and they feel that the audience can connect with. If we can go back to some of those core fundamentals of storytelling which has been there for thousands of years, I think we will arrive at a better spot for each vertical. I think they can all coexist and we will find a healthy financial reward for parents.
Great. So I think relooking stories is a great enough strategy that the film industry can go through to revive footfalls in India. Ankur, I'd like to bring you here. So talking about cinemas specifically, since you run cinemas yourself, what is your take on footfalls? Can you give us some color, some insights in terms of what is happening to the footfalls and how are you actually trying to entice the audience into cinema chains? Is it more led by discounting, for the lower end of the audience, or is it just that people are coming to watch the premium films, frequencies come down, and you're okay with that? And also some trends around the demographics of this footfall. We are seeing a decline of 25-30% on like basis, and that pointed out. Is it that the youth has completely stopped visiting cinemas for Hindi content or small medium budget content and they have become very selective? So some trends around footfalls in cinema chains.
Cinema has always been known for giving larger than life experience. So just after the post-COVID period, there has been a decline in the footfalls. But then from 2022, it has been started increasing. And running a cinema chain, what we experience is all public paid nowadays with a different concept and a different experience that was being given pre-COVID, with a better sound quality, better video quality, and a better different experience in terms of conceptual as audience. So that is what a person can experience if you want to take him from his home to come to a cinema and have experience that he has never been experienced. So a movie, what we generally see at our homes is particularly always give different experience when we are at the cinema. And being a human being, it is always in our nature, we are a social being. So no one can be restricted just to watch a movie at our home. So there has been an increasing footfall in the cinemas from earlier it used to be started with 15%, 20%. Now it has, I think we are observing an increasing trend every 2-3% every quarter, in a quarter. So, and increasing revenues has also been targeted. We can say mostly what kind of audience we can target is a medium and a high level segment. So there has been increasing revenue in all the cinema chains due to the increasing F&B also, increasing SPH ratio also. And I think targeting almost all categories of people. And demographically we can set up a different cinema chains at different locations with a different concept. If there's a premium segment, we have to come in a posh area. So I think there's from next 2 years there has been an increasing trend, and I think it's going to increase day by day. So I think there's a huge scope for cinema industry, and with the increasing content also, all the producers coming with the good content in all regional languages. There have been new movies. So I think there's a huge potential in this industry. Thank you.
Right. So, Ashish, again, to get you back in the conversation, let's talk about economics now, which is the most important part of content making. So, first question is that are we kind of well equipped to make these kind of large budget films that we're making right now, and can the budgets expand from here on? Because if you look at Indian films, they don't do that well globally, right? And global films or US films rather do well globally, but Indian films don't do well globally. Where is that trend changing? And secondly, around economics, do we need to relook the economics or cost allocation of films in terms of star cost, marketing, VFX? I mean, is that mix kind of changing now because the environment is kind of uncertain, films are not doing well, otherwise are not being made. So what are production houses of your stature thinking at this point in time?
So very good question, Karan. Actually, budget is the key to the success of any film, right? A Pathan at 250 or 300 crores for Yash Raj film is a different bet than a Pathan at 500 crores. The budget could have been 500 crores also. I mean, who could have stopped it? But that's the key question, and that is the solution as producers we all have to find. So typically, the old school way of thinking is keep the budget tight, no question about that. Keep the star prices as low as possible, no question about that. But it is also about strategizing your films very well now. Luckily, the world has opened up first in India for us from a regional language point of view. So we are being able to monetize, at least the South films are being monetized extremely well right now. A Tamil film can be distributed in the Telugu industry, Kannada industry, Malayalam industry, and there is still a theatrical business for most of them. Even globally, you can release a Tamil film like we did for PS1 in Telugu. We obviously dubbed it in Hindi and edited a certain number in Hindi as well. So from a South point of view, I think the model has been pretty much well cracked. The only thing left from the South or in the South is if we can do a film like Yash Raj is doing, I spoke about it earlier, a war two with a North Indian superstar and a South Indian superstar, and to make it in Hindi and then dub it across all languages. If the reverse would happen, we've not seen that yet. Whatever we've seen in the South is we've seen a big South superstar working on a film and that being dubbed in Hindi and doing well, if at all. Maybe that is something that we can crack down south. Now coming to your question regarding global audience. The answer is very simple actually. 1/6 of the global population is Indians, right? So I mean, where are we lacking? We just have to put out that good content and reach out to them and, the market is surely going to grow. There's no question about it.
But I think in terms of numbers, I mean, not in terms of population, but in terms of broader numbers, if you see, Hindi films or other regional films, they're not able to do more than, 10-15% of their collections, from non-India markets. But if you look at US, I think, more than 50% of the collections from US studios films come from the non-US markets, right? So I think this mismatch, and how do we correct this? Because that will eventually persuade producers to take bolder calls, make a 1,000 crore film because they know there's a potential out there. So is that changing?
It is definitely going to correct, but it may take a little time. Like if we just go a little back with pre-COVID days when the India-China relations were very nice and everything was smooth, the China territory had opened big time for us. We saw the business of Dangal, Secret Superstar, many Indian films that did exceptionally well and probably covered the cost just from the China market. So these kind of markets can continue opening for India. Like recently I was invited to Russia, I went and met them. They were really super excited about Indian content. But we have to open that market by releasing a few films, reaching out to them, marketing them well over there. Clearly for Russia, currently in the current situation, they cannot have Hollywood films releasing over there or even films from Europe releasing over there. So that just leaves India and China that can, actually produce or distribute their films. So we have to look for such pockets where we can actually kind of penetrate and use the opportunity to increase the business. It may not change dramatically overnight, for sure. And even now, when we see the business say of Tamil films, just as an example, the business of PS1 in the international territories was an eye-opener for us. We were distributing it for the first time, and the business in the US, or even on the IMAX screens, Preetham is sitting away, was phenomenal. So there is an audience. The key now is to tap the newer markets and to reach out to the non-Indian diaspora. That is where the big business can happen, like you said. So like it happened in China. So which are those countries? We need to identify that. Is Japan an opportunity because they started looking at Indian films, or are there some other markets where like Germany opened up a few years back with some of the Bollywood big films? So we need to just kind of make our way in. The other thing we have to be conscious about is the presentation of a film. So clearly for the non-Indian diaspora audience, we just cannot have the run-of-the-mill Indian masala films. The content has to be much more evolved, presented in a certain way. Even when we release some of our Hollywood films in the non-traditional markets, we are requested to reduce a few songs, reduce the length of the film, make the characters more relatable and more authentic. So if we really have to penetrate deeper in the global market, we may have to change the so-called style of filmmaking for some of the big films that come out of India. But then that's the call that the producer has to take. Whether you first take it for your market and then look at the global market, or you're just targeting the global market right away.
Great. So I think we're just scratching the surface, and I think going to key focus markets, identifying them, and working hard on them will kind of lead to a better traction. Preetham, if you can share your insights on the English counterparts, like the Hollywood studios, what are they doing in terms of ROI? I think the recent movies that we've seen, the likes of Barbie and Mario, they've generated much higher ROI as compared to an M1 or any of the large fast X kind of films. So what's your broader take on that? Is there a change that you are hearing in terms of film cost economics, from the global counterparts?
Mario and Barbie, Neeraj can probably talk a little bit more, but for me, I think those were fantastic films and, low cost of making, high return on investment. I think this is where, the point of strategic sort of content choice comes up. And obviously, the films resonated well with their audiences and also tapped into the sort of brand equity that was out there. But, should we continue to do more of these kind of films? The answer would probably be yes. I think the box office that we've seen on these films wouldn't give you a choice. We continue to do those kind of films. But, I see Hollywood is changing, and the fact that these kind of films are coming out is a testimony to that. I guess that's what it. Minutes could probably add a little bit more.
Yeah, would you like to add something on this?
Yeah, so if you go to see, Barbie had a budget of $100 million. Mario about $150 million. It's basically every studio strategy, how much money they want to deploy and what's the kind of project they want to make. Fun fact, Barbie today is $1 billion film. First film to have a woman director, first film to have a woman actress to have touched $1 billion. So this trend is changing purely because of the way the film was marketed. See, every studio, company, production producer first needs to be absolutely honest with the film they want to make and for whom they want to make it. You want to make a film for the Indian audiences, you want to make it for the expat Indians, that clarity is required. Problem is, very often we get too involved in the math. This much will come from here, that much will come from there, that much will be sold for so much. That's why it's a film. So, focus on the content, make the film you want to make, and if it crosses over, that is bonus.
Absolutely. So I think just one last topic to discuss now is we discussed the film economic side. Now the theatre economic side, if I can get perspective from Vishesh and Neeraj on this. Do you all align with the view that there is a need for differential ticket prices, like small ticket project content being priced at 40% discount versus the average ticket prices? And do you think eventually that footfalls will come back basis this? Just your broader insights. I'll start with you, Neeraj.
Horses for courses. India is the only country where there are states where ticket prices are governed or dominated by what the government wants. So I think it should be free market, differential pricing, dynamic ticket pricing. My panelist on the right who runs a cinema chain will agree. We need to push ticket prices up, not because it's great success, but that's the journey of every country, territory. India for the longest time, average ticket price was $1. When dollar was 40 rupees. Our presentation would start, average ticket price in India, $1. $1 was 40 bucks. I'm saying today average ticket prices have moved on to 2 or 3. They need to get to 10, 15, which eventually will. But more than that, what we need is we need the magic 40,000 screen figure. The more screens we can have, that's going to act the box office.
Vishesh, your take on this? Would you be okay as a production house to put your film over there at a lower ticket price in anticipation that your footfalls will actually see a big uptick?
I think that's a distribution release strategy, but we did also quite a lot about that. But I think coming to the Barbie conversation, that's more connected in this. See, what he said is it's a female director touching $1 billion. the idea is, and then Barbie's changed its perspective also. It's a feminist story. Now, what we were saying earlier from on the single screen and audiences stepping out. The main thing is that ultimately the topic has to be for an cinema experience, the social experience. Now, if you predetermine that by being a superhero film only, which is what most people tend to do, then you are now facing in the West already something called the superhero fatigue. You are seeing Barbie doing the numbers it's doing. Oppenheimer, people are shocked and the marketeers are shocked, I would say, not filmmakers, are shocked. It's this paced film, slow film. How can it be theatrically do this well? So it just comes down to, I think, as long as it becomes something that excites a group to go together in terms of storytelling and what the subject is, I think the differential pricing is not because then people are willing to pay for the IMAX experience. People are willing, and they are not gone for big VFX in Oppenheimer. They've gone for how they want to see the atomic bomb. So I think that has been oversimplified. And I think another thing is that once this social thing is taken, to fix a lot of these things, Karan, we can all be talking about ticket pricing, this and that. The source from which a film is made, where it releases, that has gone wrong somewhere. We got lost somewhere. Because today, most of the films are being made based on the actor deciding what should be made. Because that's become your reverse model of how a film should be made and sold. If today your lead actors are going to decide storytelling, Barbie was not decided by Margot Robbie, or Oppenheimer is not made by Cillian Murphy. But this is how this industry is running. So you're going to land up only making films that actors and their understanding of storytelling is. If we don't change that, I think we are going to be we are not going to get out of this conversation.
Right, so I think, Barbie and Oppenheimer have been case studies, even Mario for that matter. I think that's pure innovation. Hopefully, the Hindi film industry also moves directly on that path and, moves towards pure innovation. I think, again, the three success formulas which hold true. One is technology, content, and, making Indian films appeal overseas. I think if this happens to be, I think we see a very bright future for the industry. Thank you so much, all the panelists, for giving your insights.
Thank you, gentlemen, for a power-packed session indeed. Can we please have a huge round of applause for them? May I please invite on stage Raghav to kindly felicitate and thank each of our honorable speakers here today for being here with us, for sharing their valuable thoughts and views with us on this stage.